is a beautiful statement from Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, and I want you to pay attention to this. And so he says this statement is an explanation of the same ayah, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. So he says, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says this ayah نزل هذه الآية أو he said نزل هذه الآية على أحوال العالم. So he's saying to you, take this verse and apply it to the situation or the affairs that you see taking place in the world. Take this ayah, apply it to every affair, every situation that you see taking place in the world. So if you want to take this verse and apply it to, for example, Egypt, apply it to Egypt. The Arab Springs, the revolutions, apply it to the situation there. Right? Or any other country, apply it to any other country. He says, وَطَابِقْ بَيْنَ الْوَاقِعِ وَبَيْنَهَا. Compare, so take this ayah, apply it to what you see in the world, and then compare and contrast, apply it and compare between the reality that you see and between what this verse is telling you. And you will see, وَأَنْتَ تَرَى كَيْفَ تَحْدُث مِنْ تِلْكَ الْآفَاتِ وَالْإِلَلِ. You will see how these calamities and these kind of flaws, they appear in every time. They're always appearing, meaning these deficiencies and flaws, whether it is in the fruits and the vegetation and the animals, and how these calamities and flaws and defects, that they come in succession. They are tied one to another. He says, وَكُلَّمَا أَحْدَثَ النَّاسِ ظُلْمًا وَفُجُورًا أَحْدَثَ لَهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى مِنَ الْآفَاتِ وَالْإِلَلِ. Every time the people, they bring about an instance of dhulm, an instance of oppression, right? So the subjects now, you oppress another person, you oppress him in something, or you commit fujur, you commit some sin. Every time this happens, their Lord, the Blessed and the Most High, what does He do? He brings out a calamity and some flaw or deficiency in وَالْإِلَلْ فِي أَغْذِيَتِهِمْ, in their food, in their nutrition, وَفَوَاكِهِهِمْ, in their fruits that they harvest, وَأَحْوِيَتِهِمْ وَمِيَاهِهِمْ, and in basically in the environment as well, in the waters, in the streams, in the waters, in the rivers, and in the air that they breathe, وَأَبْدَانِهِمْ, and in their bodies, وَخَلْقِهِمْ, and in the physical form and the structure of their bodies, وَصُوَرِهِمْ, and in their appearances, وَأَشْكَالِهِمْ, and in their forms and shapes, وَأَخْلَاقِهِمْ, and in their characteristics and qualities. So he brings out in all of these affairs مِنَ النَّقْصِ وَالْآفَاتِ مَا هُوَ مُوجِبُ أَعْمَالِهِمْ وَظُلْمِهِمْ وَفُجُورِهِمْ. So he brings out flaws and deficiencies in all of these things that we mentioned, such calamities and flaws which are necessitated and demanded by their own actions, the actions which they are committing, the actions of dhulm, of oppression of each other, and the actions of the fujur, which is their sin. Now he gives a really nice example. He says, وَلَقَدْ كَانَتِ الْحُبُوبُ مِنَ الْحِنْطَةِ وَغَيْرِهَا أَكْبَرُ مِمَّا هِيَ الْيَوْمِ. He says that today, or he says that if you were to take a grain of wheat today, you will come to realize that in the time that has gone, a grain of wheat used to be much larger than it is today. كَمَا كَانَتِ الْبَرَكَةُ فِيهَا أَعْظَمُ. Just like the blessing in that grain of wheat was much greater. وقد روى الإمام أحمد بإسناده. Imam Ahmad has related with his isnad أنه وجد في خزائن بعد بني أمية سرة فيها حنطة أمثال نوى التمر مكتوبا عليها هذا كان ينبت أيام العدل. He said that, narrating from Imam Ahmad, that Bani Umayyah, so this is Ibn al-Qayyim narrating about the time of Imam Ahmad, who was saying that in the time of Bani Umayyah, which is 100 roughly years before Imam Ahmad, that they found a treasure chest of Bani Umayyah. And in this treasure chest, they found a grain of wheat. And this grain of wheat was the size of the date stone. It was this big, the grain of wheat. Right? It was that big. And it was written on this grain of wheat, هَذَا كَانَ يَنْبُتْ أَيَّامَ الْعَدَلِ. This is what used to grow in the days of justice. In the days of justice. When there was adl in the society, then this is how the wheat would grow in such a large size, and it would be of great barakah, plenty of barakah. So he says, وَهَذِهِ الْقِصَّةَ ذَكَرَهَا فِي مُسْنَدِهِ على, this story he mentioned in his musnad. Then he goes on to explain that most of these diseases وأكثر هذه الأمراض والآفات العامة بقية عذاب عذبت به الأمم السالفة. Most of these calamities that you see in the society, so remember, we are supposed to be applying this to everything that we see in the world, right? He's saying that most of these diseases and these general calamities that you see, they are simply a remnant. They are the after effects and the remnants or the remains of a punishment by which the previous nations were punished with. Then these calamities and these diseases, they were allowed to remain so that anyone who did the same deeds as those destroyed nations, then these calamities and these afflictions will come and afflict them as well. In other words, all of those previous nations who have been mentioned in the Quran and who have been destroyed in a variety of different ways, whether it be the people of Nuh alayhi salam, whether it be the people of Aad and the Thamud, right? So many nations destroyed in different ways. Some of them drowned, some of them swallowed by the earth, some of them destroyed completely by the wind, a fierce wind. Others, for example, like it is mentioned here, the Bani Israel, in fact he says that ثُمَّ بَقِيَتْ مِنْهَا بَقِيَّةٌ مَرْصَدَةً لِمَنْ بَقِيَتْ عَلَيْهِ بَقِيَّةً مِنْ أَعْمَالِهِمْ. So these calamities and these types of diseases, they remained so that they can ambush any person who does the same deeds as those people did. And he says, حُكْمًا قِسْطًا وَقَضَاءً عَدْلًا. This is a just judgment and a just ruling. He says, وَقَدْ أَشَارَ النَّبِيُّ صلى الله عليه وسلم إلى هذا بقوله في الطاعون إنه بقية رجز أو عذاب أرسل على بني إسرائيل. So he mentioned about the plague. What is the plague? He said the plague, this disease that comes and it's it spreads, whatever. He says this is a remnant of the punishment that was sent upon Bani Israel. وكذلك سلط الله عز وجل الريح على قوم 7 ليال وثمانية أيام. Likewise, Allah Azza wa Jal, He sent the wind for 7 nights and 8 days, and this is some of the nations of the past, like Aad. So the point being, he is saying that all the calamities you see and the hardships that you see and all of the deficiencies that you find in people's appearances, in their bodies, in the food that they are eating and everything else, then this has a certain reason and a cause, and the decrease in barakah. All of this returns back to the people's deeds, the people's actions, the people's dhulm, the people's fujur that they fall into. Then he continues. He says, وَقَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ سُبْحَانَهُ أَعْمَالُ الْبَرِّ وَالْفَاجِرِ مُقْتَدَيَاتٍ لِآثَارِهَا فِي هَذَا الْعَالَمِ اقْتِدَاءً لَا بُدَّ مِنْهِ. So what he's saying here is that Allah Azza wa Jal has tied to the actions of every righteous person and every evil person, He's tied to their actions certain effects. Certain effects in this world that they are absolutely, they cannot be disconnected. Right? These are tied like this. If you do certain actions, this will happen. If you do certain actions, that will happen. Right? This is what Ibn al-Qayyim is saying. So this is like, for example, you know that if you, as a rule in Allah's creation, when you drink this water, it will remove your thirst. We know this from experience, right? Likewise, if you put your hand in the fire, that hand is going to burn. These are the laws of Allah in His creation. We know these laws because we study them, we experience them, and through that we are able to understand the world and, facilitate our livelihood and other affairs. But there are some other things which we cannot know just by this limited experience. And these are the things that Allah Azza wa Jal has informed us of in the Quran, and His Messenger has explained in more detail in the Sunnah. So Ibn al-Qayyim is mentioning here that Allah Azza wa Jal has tied to every righteous person's actions and every evil person's actions certain effects which are not separable. You can't separate them. So He made فَجَعَلَ مَنْءَ الْإِحْسَانِ وَالزَّكَاةِ وَالصَّدَقَةِ سَبَبًا لِمَنْءِ الْغَيْثِ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْقَحْطِ وَالْجَدَبِ. So He said, Allah Azza wa Jal, when a people they withhold being kind to others and giving the zakah and giving sadaqah, charity, when they withhold this, then Allah has made this to be a reason or a cause for the rain to be withheld from the sky and for there to be a drought and a famine. So now, what is the real and true cause of a drought and famine? Is it because of the evil ruler? Is it because of economic policies? Is it because of this? Is it because of that? No, these are not the real, true underlying causes. Here it is being made clear for us in the Sunnah that when the people, the subjects, they withhold being benevolent and kind to the poor and the needy, withhold the zakah, withhold the sadaqah, then Allah Azza wa Jal will withhold the rain from the sky. And then there will be droughts and famines and, lack of provision. This is the true, real and the true cause. And this is very clearly stated in a hadith anyway, which we're going to mention. Likewise, He says, وَجَعَلَ ظُلْمَ الْمَسَاكِينَ. And He made that when people oppress those who are poor, and to cheat in weights and measures, فِي الْمَكَايِيلِ وَالْمَوَازِينَ, and when a strong person, he basically devours a weak person, right? So in some societies, you find the people who are strong and rich and powerful, they manipulate and exploit the poor people, as you find in many societies. Economically, the rich always exploit the weak. So when you see this happening, what happens? That Allah Azza wa Jal, He has made this sababan لجور الملوك والولاة الذين لا يرحمون إن استرحموا ولا يعطفون إن استعطفوا. He said that this is a cause for the tyranny of the ruler, for the ruler becoming tyrannical and oppressive. He puts such kings that if you ask them to show mercy, they will not show mercy. If you ask them to be considerate, they will not be considerate. So look at this. What is the real reason for a tyrannical ruler, an oppressive ruler? Right? Where should we be pointing the fingers? And who is the one who appointed that tyrannical ruler? Who is the one who laid down this law of tyrannical rulers being put over people because they do certain deeds and actions, which is they cheat in the weights and measures between themselves, and the strong exploit the weak? Who is the one who laid down this law? It is Allah Azza wa Jal, from His wisdom and from His justice. So He says, وَهُمْ meaning these rulers, وَهُمْ فِي الْحَقِيقَةِ أَعْمَالُ الرِّعَايَةِ ظَهَرَتْ فِي سُوَرِ وُلَاتِهِمْ. So what he's saying here is that when you see a tyrannical ruler and he's tyrannical on his subjects, he does not show them mercy, he does not show them kindness, and he does not fulfill their rights. What is it that we are seeing in this ruler? What we are seeing is the actions of his subjects, the deeds of everybody in his nation. They have been physically represented, they have taken a physical form in this ruler. What you are seeing of this ruler and all of his deeds, that is simply a manifestation of what the people are doing. Or not what the people are doing, but what the people deserve from Allah Azza wa Jal by way of His adl and hikmah, by way of His justice and His hikmah. Look at this. So, he says, and then look at this, he says, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ سُبْحَانَهُ بِحِكْمَتِهِ وَعَدْلِهِ يُظْهِرُ لِلنَّاسِ أَعْمَالَهُمْ في قوالب وسور تناسبها. Indeed, Allah the Sublime, through His wisdom and His justice, He makes it appear to people, or He makes their own deeds appear to them in the form of forms and appearances and shapes in front of them, which are tanasubuha, which are directly related to their deeds, right? So he says, for example, sometimes he will show them their deeds by way of a famine or a drought. This is one way. The second way, wataratan bi'aduwin. The second way he will show them their own deeds is by way of an enemy who comes and who attacks your land, right? وَتَارَةً بِوُلَاتٍ جَائِرِينَ. Another time it could be by way of tyrannical rulers. He shows them their own deeds by way of tyrannical rulers. وَتَارَةً بِأَمْرَادٍ عَامَّةٍ. Other times it is by way of general disease which spreads. وَتَارَةً بِهُمُومٍ وَالْآلَامِ وَهُمُومٍ تحضرها نفوسهم لا ينفكون عنها. Other times it is by way of people being struck with anxiety and stress and sorrow and grief. These things come to their souls and they do not leave their souls. Right? This is another way. وتارة بمنع بركات السماء والأرض عنهم. Other times it is by Him withholding the blessings of the heaven and the earth from them. So rain does not come down, nor does the herbage come out of the earth. Why? لِتُحِقَّ عَلَيْهِمُ الْكَلِمَةِ وَلِيَسِيرَ كُلٌّ مِّنْهُمْ إِلَى مَا خُلِقَ لَهُ. Why does Allah do this? He does it first of all so His word can be established true against them. His word can be proven over them. And that every individual, by way of Allah's qadr, he will be led to his destination, his eventual destination. Look at the wisdom of Allah Azza wa Jal. See this, how Ibn al-Qayyim has perfectly explained everything to us. So everything you are seeing, he mentioned everything. A famine, a drought, an enemy attacking and dominating your nation, tyrannical rulers, general diseases which, in terms of the body, which spread in the society, psychological illnesses, stress, depression, anxiety, sorrow, grief, which enter the souls and do not separate from them. Or it can be withholding the rain and withholding the growth from the earth. Or it can be, and then he says also, وَتَارَةً بِتَسْلِيتِ الشَّيَاطِينِ عَلَيْهِمْ تَأُزُّهُمْ إِلَى أَسْبَابِ الْعَذَابِ أَزَّا. And other times Allah might just incite the devils, the shayateen. He will incite them against you to lead you further into misguidance and the causes of punishment. All of this, Allah is doing this to establish His word as being true and to lead each person, to whatever his outcome is going to be by way of his al-qadr, by way of al-qadr. وَالْعَاقِلُ يُسَيِّرُ بَصِيرَتَهُ بَيْنَ أَقْطَارِ الْعَالَمِ. So the intelligent person, he takes his sight and he puts his sight over the various parts of the world. And he witnesses all of this. And he starts to see how Allah's adl, Allah's justice and Allah's wisdom is being manifested. And then it will become clear to him that the messengers and their followers specifically, they are the ones who are on the path of deliverance. And as for all of the creation, the rest of the creation, they are upon the path of destruction. And they are, moving towards the path of destruction. And Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who can reach His affair. No one can follow up and alter His judgment, and no one can repel His command. And with Allah is success.
Can the owner of a Citroen minibus, registration number CU15VYS, please move that vehicle immediately? Registration number CU15VYS, Citroen minibus, which is parked across the road from the masjid. Jazakallah khair.